Hey everybody, this is John from Bike Fit Advisor. I'm just finishing up with a couple of bike fits for the night, and I want to kind of hit on something that has come up a few times during these bike fits, and I think it stems from some misconceptions people have regarding bike fit and what it means for how much effort should be involved in how you're sitting on the bike. So really what this comes down to is the idea that even with a great bike fit, you can never be passive on the bike. So let's dig into it, and I want to talk about this a little bit more. Hang on. Okay, so let's get this out of the way first. There are always going to be active requirements on the bike. You're going to have to be doing work. Now, I know this sounds really basic, but there's a reason I think this comes up. And whether it's YouTube videos about bike fitting or social media stuff, I think people get this misconception from those types of demonstrations that when you find that perfect bike fit, it is going to just lock you in so perfectly. It's just going to feel like you are exactly one with the bike and everything's going to be perfect. And I think people get this idea sometimes because they're sort of told this a little bit in some of these media that it should feel effortless. And we don't want the effort to be high, that's for sure, but it's not going to be ever effortless. There's always going to be some active requirements. Generally speaking, too, the more aggressive your position is, so if your saddle is higher, you have a higher saddle position and a lower and longer bar position, generally that there's going to be more active requirements on your position. It might not feel like more because you might actually have good stability and good mobility and absorb that very easily. On the other end of the spectrum, if you have a very endurance style geometry and setup where saddle and bar height are similar, or maybe even you're a little bit positive on the bar height, there are fewer active requirements because generally we're bearing more weight through the skeletal system and through the soft tissues, but there's always going to be some active requirements. This is never passive. We're not sitting on a couch no matter what we do. And there's also trade-offs for having a less aggressive position too, because we are kind of bearing more of that weight through the skeletal structure and through the soft tissue. That tends to put more pressure on there, especially at the saddle. So let's talk about what is active and what we want to be more active more consistently. There's a ton of muscles that are active while we're riding a bike. But I want to focus on two areas, and these two areas are sort of cornerstones, I think, for our posture on the bike. They really help us maintain the proper place that we're sitting on the saddle and make the reach to the bars easier and allow us to generate power through the pedals the most effectively. So clearly we have a lot happening through the legs. And then we stabilize ourselves with our hands on the handlebars, of course. The two muscle systems I want to talk about are the lats, which are latissimus dorsi, which are a back muscle, and they activate on the shoulder, and especially the lower end of the abdominals. Now, the reason I think these two groups are important is because they definitely play a pivotal role in maintaining posture of the right thing. So the lats, they're going to work on some upper extremity position, some arm position, as well as torso position, where then the lower abdominals, they kind of are going to be more responsible for pelvic posture and sort of making sure that the right things are in contact with the saddle. So let's take a look a little bit more at where these muscles are and how the fibers are oriented, because it'll give you a better idea of how they're doing their work. Okay, so this is a website that I like to use. It's called Inner Body. It has this great 3D rendering that you can use. And so when we're looking at the muscle groups here, this is the first one I want to bring your attention to, which is the lat or latissimus dorsi. This is, of course, the left side. And then if we scroll around to the front, though, let's tackle the abdominals first. So I already have this set up. So this left side of the body here, these are the intact abdominals. This is what they look like. And then on this side, I hid them all. So what we have, and it's not really important to get too caught up in the different groups. but pay attention to where they attach. So this is the transverse abdominis here, is the first layer. It's the deepest layer, and these muscle fibers run this way. And that's the key to kind of understanding how a muscle works, is to kind of look at the direction of the muscle fibers. So this inner layer, they run this way. That's why they're called transverse. But notice really the main thing is that it attaches right here down, and this is the top of the pelvis, the rim of the pelvis here, and so it is going to have a tremendous control over that structure. The next layer, this is the rectus abdominis, and then we have our these are the right internal obliques, and then on top of that we have our external obliques. But notice how all of them attach to that same upper half of the pelvis, upper top rim of the pelvis. So we go back to the lats, again, looking here at those lats. Notice those fibers run this way, and look at where this lat attaches to, all through the thoracic spine, lumbar spine, and even the top of the pelvis. And where this gets key is if I highlight that, and then we swing around, and we kind of come in here deep into the shoulder. And I'll have to pan over just a little bit so we can get a good look at this. Is notice that lat comes through here, and then it dives through the armpit basically, and it ends up being here. Let's see if I can get us there, hide a couple of those. And there's our lat, and it attaches right there to the front of the shoulder. And it attaches just below the head of the humerus. So when we are activating this muscle, if the hands aren't attached to anything, if our arm is just, free floating, just like it is with this model here, and these muscles tighten, it's going to bring this hand back. It's going to bring us into shoulder extension, or bringing the hand behind the hips. But on the bike, our hand's attached to the handlebars, so it's fixed, in which case it will stabilize then that shoulder, but then it's also, that's why when you tighten this muscle, it's actually going to straighten that thoracic spine, because that's what it's pulling on, and it is a stabilizer for the entire spine. Okay, so now what can we do to make sure that these muscles are remaining active and that they're just doing their job throughout a bike ride? But let's back up a second. So why would we need to, if these muscles are active when we start, why would we need to make sure that they're remaining active through the bike ride? Well, it goes back to the idea that our bodies are built to be as efficient as possible. And in a lot of those cases, you can substitute the word efficient for lazy, because our body's always trying to save. That's just how we're built. We're trying to save energy. We're trying to save calories. We're trying to do all sorts of things that save. And so through any endurance activity especially, our body is, as we get into it and go 20 minutes, a half an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, the longer we go, the body's always going to be working on trying to continue doing what we're doing, pedaling our bike, but trying to see if it can get away with doing it with less muscle activity. Because using less muscle activity will save glycogen, basically. It'll save it won't burn as much ATP. Some of this has to do with fatigue, and this is some of the nature of fatigue, is that our body sort of down regulates the certain motor units, and so we don't have as many working towards the end of a ride as we do at the beginning. And so it's not as if we need a giant muscle contraction out of these muscles. We just want them to be more engaged. We just want to kind of wake them up occasionally. And so this is going to be a really simple cue. It's going to be a really basic exercise that you can do on the bike while you're riding to re-engage these muscles, and you'll notice it will fundamentally change how you're sitting on the bike and make you feel a little bit better while you're pedaling. So it is probably best to do this the first time on a stationary trainer just for safety, but you should be able to pick this up pretty quickly, and once you do, you'll easily be able to do this out on the road. It might, when we do it here, it might take you 10 or 15 seconds to go through a full sequence of this a couple of times to get the feel. But when you actually get better at it and you can do it on the road, it's literally can be a quick 2 or 3 second adjustment, and you just sprinkle throughout a bike ride and do it once and not worry about it for half an hour and then come back to it depending on how you're feeling. So it's really basic. What we're gonna do first is just trying to try to get you engaged with these and kind of sense and feel these muscles working. So what I want you to do first, you're pedaling on your stationary trainer, okay? And what you're going to do is hanging on the handlebars, rear end on the seat. You're gonna start by like you're pushing yourself away from your handlebars with your arms. So your elbows are gonna straighten, and it's like you're gonna be trying to put your head between your arms, okay? You're rounding your back out as you do this. So while you're rounding your back out, I just want you to pay attention this first time through. Pay attention to, real basic, what stretches and what kind of tightens up. And if we're rounding our back out, you're probably gonna feel maybe a little stretch towards the back and a little tightening towards the front. That's all you need to worry about. Now, after you hold that for 2 or 3 seconds to kind of get the feel, now you're gonna go the opposite direction and you're gonna go forward. You're gonna try and pretend like you're trying to bring your chest towards your handlebars and you're arching your back. And again, just pay attention to what tightens and what stretches a little bit. So you might feel a little stretch or pull towards the front, and you might feel some muscles tighten towards the back. Okay, let's go back again, round your back again, head between the arms, rounding the back out. I do this time, I want you to feel you tighten the abdominal muscles a little bit, those muscles in the front, especially towards the bottom, towards the lower half. Hold that position, maybe even for as much as 5, 6, 7 seconds, just to kind of get that feel. When you do that, I want you to notice, you should notice as those abdominal muscles tighten, that pelvis is going to tip back, and you're going to also maybe notice a little less pressure on the front of the saddle. You're going to kind of feel that pelvis lift up. Okay, after you hold that for a 5 or even up to a 10 count potentially, let's go the opposite direction. So we're going to arch the back again, like you're bringing your chest and your abdomen towards the handlebars. But this time, what I want you to focus on is, strangely enough, is your elbows. I want you to pretend like you're trying to drive your elbows down towards your hips. You're still hanging onto the handlebars, but try and get that sensation of driving the elbows down towards the hips as you arch that back and try and bring that chest forward. When you drive those elbows down like that, you're activating the muscles underneath the arm, and kind of you'll feel it on your back. You might feel your mid-back, your thoracic spine straighten a little bit. That's those lat muscles tightening up. Again, because your hands are attached to those handlebars, you're not executing a ton of shoulder motion. Normally the lats would extend your shoulders and bring them behind you. But because you're hanging on the handlebars, it's actually pulling the other end. It's pulling that thoracic spine straight and pulling it forward a little bit. But as we showed in that anatomy, those lats attach to the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine, and the top of the pelvis. So this is all stabilizing that part of the that part of the trunk from the backside. So what we're doing is kind of activating 2 ends of the trunk stabilizers, really, when we do this. So again, rounding the back, tightening the lower abdominals, lifting the pelvis up off the saddle a little bit, and tipping it backwards, not lifting it completely off. And then going the other direction, arching the back, driving the elbows towards the hips, and engaging those lats. You'll notice your shoulders drop down when you do that. When you do this in a bike ride, that's all I want you to focus on, is you're gonna do 1 repetition each direction. 1 time rounding the back and tightening the abdominals, 1 time arching the back and tightening those lats. You do that, you hold each for 2 seconds maybe, 2 or 3 seconds at the most, and you just go, then you go return right back to your normal pedaling posture, and I guarantee you're gonna feel as if you're sitting on the bike a little bit differently, and the reach of the bike might actually feel a little easier for you as well. And this is something, it takes so little time that you can kind of return back to it a couple of times through longer rides even. Like I said, sometimes it's even every 20 or 30 minutes. You just do 1 quick one, reset yourself on the bike, and like I said, I guarantee it's gonna change the way that you feel on the bike. So this type of correction is really important, because what it does is it puts us back in as close as we can get that optimal riding posture, and it prevents our body from being lazy. And the more often we reset ourselves to that position, the more likely we are going to be able to hold that position. And just the more we're in that position, the more we're going to stay in that position. It's just how it works. It's just going to get more and more consistent. Will you do it 100% of all your rides, no matter how long? Nope, you're going to need to occasionally return back to this, but it will keep you there longer. And this is what I mean by remaining active on the bike. We have to make sure we re-engage these muscles occasionally, reset our posture. Because if we do that, now you're actually being an active participant in your bike fit and in your posture on the bike. And this opens up a lot of doors to work on even higher level things in regards to riding your bike, like managing your breathing and attention and assessment of your pedal stroke efficiency, things like that. Those are things that we can get into in future videos though. So go ahead and give that a try. Let me know down in the comments what you notice when you do that type of correction. I always like to hear how this works or how we need to tweak it for different people, because there's always going to be small variations. But I really appreciate you hanging in there on this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.